All right, so today we have Simone Giacomelli, who will tell us about 4D superconformal theories from S-folds. Take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Julius, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to give another talk at the Quiver meeting. So today I'm going to be talking about four-dimensional theories with 8 supercharges. This seminar is mainly based on this work I've done with Raffaele and Gianluca in the spring. And some closely related work with Dopadol, Alessandro, and William, and some work in progress as well. Plus, it's also based on previous works I've done some years ago, also with some people in the audience. So, as I said, the main topic is four-dimensional series with 8 supercharges. By now, we understand very well their dynamics, and in particular, these series are known to have a rich moduli space with a rich geometric structure. Particular, we focus always on the study of Coulomb branch and X branch. The Coulomb branch typically is freely generated, and what we look for is to find the scaling dimension of the generators of the space. And then the X branch, well, often we can repackage the information about the X branch, which is not freely generated. In terms of a quiver, and we look at the Coulomb branch of the quiver. This repackages the information about the X branch. And this is precisely the approach we are going to follow in this case as well. The structure of the moduli space and its properties can be exploited to set up a classification program for this theory. So we have at least a corner we can understand rather well and hopefully classify. This is especially effectful for theories of low rank. By rank, I always mean the Coulomb branch dimension. The rank 1 case has been solved a few years ago in a series of papers by these authors. Then we also have many results at rank 2 and higher based on many follow-ups works. Okay. Now, the focus here is to try to understand more the space of theory by looking at string embeddings of them. There are two main categories which are used to explore the space of n equal 2 theories. One is by compactifying type 2B on singular Calabi-Yau folds. Another very well-known one is class S, where we have 6-dimensional 2,0 theories, and we wrap them on Riemann surfaces with punctures. This gives a large class of theories. Most of them don't have any obvious Lagrangian description, but at least from this stringy perspective, we have a handle on the theories. One of the main disadvantages of these main tools I see is that, unlike in the classification paradigm for low rank, these setups don't really give a handle on the RG flows connecting these theories. We can usually study Higgsing, but for instance, RG flows triggered by relevant deformations, which for n equal to usually means mass deformations. This is not clear how to approach them, how to find them. And so it's not clear how these theories are connected among each other. And so one target and one motivation for my work is precisely to try to find a convenient setup to explore relevant deformations. Okay, the geometric setup I have in mind exploits the S-fold construction in type 2B, which was introduced by Iñaki to construct the first examples of theories with 12 supercharges in 4 dimensions. And this is about D3 branes probing a certain background in type 2B or F theory, more precisely, which I will detail later. It turns out that some of these theories also have an alternative description in terms of compactification of certain 6-dimensional theories with minimal supersymmetry on the topos, and depending on which properties one is interested in studying, one setup or the other is more convenient. So the idea is to explain now is to introduce both constructions, explain how they are related, how we can extract properties from them, and then what kind of insight we get about for the n equal to 3 theories from this. So this includes a lot of material, so I have a lot of background to review. Let's start from 7 branes. These are well known since the 90s. So one way to construct a class of 4-dimensional theories with 8 supercharges, as is well known, is to introduce 7 branes in type 2b. I picked those which have a constant axiodilaton. These have an 8-dimensional world volume, and they create a deficit angle in their transverse plane, which I label with delta 7. This parameter will occur frequently. So delta 7 can only pick these 7 values. Well, there is also one which is no 7 brane at all. And then we have a gauge algebra on top, which is just the gauge symmetry living on the world volume of these 7 branes. So this is an 8-dimensional gauge theory. Now, to get a 4-dimensional theory, we introduce the 3 branes probing this background. Yeah, as a sketch here in the table. My 4-dimensional theory lives on the world volume of the D3. And from the standpoint of the 4-dimensional theory, this G is just a global symmetry. So this was used to construct a large class of theories almost 30 years ago now. Then we're going to refine this by introducing S-folds, as I mentioned before. So the idea is to introduce a further quotient on the transverse plane to the world volume of the 7 brane. The quotient will be ZL. Now, the subtle point is that in order to preserve 8 supercharges, I also need to embed this non-trivial action inside the S-duality group of type 2b in this way. And since discrete Zn groups are a subgroup of SL2Z only for n equal 1, 2, 3, 4, or 6, I find that L delta 7 should have these values, implying this list of possibilities. This is what I've done a few years ago in collaboration with Fabio and Sakura. So each of these possibilities lead to an infinite class of theories labeled by the number of the 3 branes I used for the background. And these include all rank 1 theories, if we want, up to discrete gauging. And this was the main target of our project. Okay, now let's look at the other alternative setup for 60 theories on T2. The class of 60 theories we'll be talking about are called orb instantons. They've been introduced in this work. They have a similar setup to the 7 brane discussed before, but this time in M theory, where instead of 7 branes I have an M9, which fills a 10-dimensional space inside the 11-dimensional M theory. And I probe this with M5. Okay. This gives E-string theories, as is well known. We can refine this by including an orbifold, which acts along the 4 directions transverse to the M5 world volume. Okay. Now, in principle, this orbifold could be any ADE type, but I will just focus for the purpose of this talk to the abelian case where gamma is Zn. for some m, can be any integer. So if we want, we can think of the six-dimensional theories living on the M5 as the ultraviolet completion of these gauge theories, which live on the tensor branch of the 60 theory. So we have a linear quiver with bifundamental hypermultiplets. I have m flavors at the end. Here, going from left to right, the rank of the SU groups increases until I find m, and then it is constantly equal to m. Okay, the first node in the quiver, G, can be of SU or UFP type. Okay, once I have fixed the number of M5 brains, which is basically the length of this quiver, and the orbifold group, I still have many different Orbi instanton theories, which are labeled by homomorphisms from Zm to E8. So E8 is the gauge symmetry supported on the world volume of the M9. Since here we have an orbifold action, okay, what I need to do in order to specify the configuration is to assign the all orbi for the E8 gauge fields at infinity. These holonomics turn out to be classified by specifying a set of integers which have this value. I will explain later what this means. And the important thing is that these numbers satisfy this constraint. So their weighted sum with this coefficient is equal to the orbifold order. Okay, so the idea is that starting from these 6D theories, I have an alternative way to realize some of the S-fold models in the following way. Well, of course, I start from a six-dimensional theory. I want to go down to 4. So what I do is to put the theory on T2. I can just consider plain double-dimensional reduction. This will give me a theory. But I also have another option. Whenever the 6D theory I start from as a global symmetry of this type, so simply laced group over a ZL, well, ZL is inside the center of G hat. Now we have a more sophisticated option, which is turning on holonomies along the non-trivial cycles of the torus, which do not commute, they almost commute, they more precisely satisfy this relation. This still preserves n equal to supersymmetry. This is called the Stiefel-Whitney twist. It has been introduced in this paper. And the effect of these holonomies is to change radically the properties of the theory. It really gives a completely different model in lower dimension. Now, when can I actually perform this twisted compactification? Well, this was studied a couple of years ago by this group. And it turns out that the condition I have to impose to be able to perform this ZL twist is that the parameters Ni, I showed before, should be such that the index I is a multiple of L. This is the condition. Okay, we realized already several years ago that the S-fold setups we had could also be realized in this way. Yeah, only a few special cases of this construction actually appeared if we have only S-folds and cyberspace. So now the goal is to expand our construction in order to capture all of them. And it turns out I can do that. The thing I have to do is to introduce another building block. Yes?
The index of these NIs is related then to some labeling of nodes on the Dinkin
Yeah, the
diagram?
nodes in the Dinkin diagram. I will talk about it in the next slide. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So as I explained before, the type 2B, I have a 7 brane, I have my ZL. Now I use all the coordinates transverse to the work volume of the D3 brane. Now I package the 6 coordinates into very complex coordinates. And then I also include the F-theory torus on which SL2Z act. Now the ZL action precisely as this form, and it also acts on the T2, and because of this, the values of L are highly constrained. This ZK instead is not constrained by anything. Okay, can be any positive integer. So in this way, we get a much larger class of theories, which are labeled by 2 arbitrary positive integers, n and k. If I hold k fixed and I let n grow, the Coulomb branch dimension of the resulting 4D series scales like nk, which is what we expect for a zk orbifold. Usually it's slightly less than this. And I think the previous case, when we talk about orbi instantons, also now we have to specify holonomies. Our 7 brane wraps this singular space, so I need to prescribe holonomies for the gauge symmetry supported on the 7 brane as well. So it turns out that we find for given n and k a large family of models which scales in this way for large k. It essentially depends on the value of L. So what we find is that whenever we pick the maximal 7 brane we can have, meaning that L times delta 7 is equal to 6, these superconformal theories actually coincide with Stiefel-Whitney theories. So this is the link between the 2 common constructions. So from orbi instantons, I can get S-fold theories corresponding to the maximal choice of 7 brane. And now it turns out that the correct value of M, the orbifold in M theory, is LK, so L times the orbifold in type 2B. Okay, since there are lots of ingredients, probably it's a good moment to recap a bit the construction. But before doing this, I would like to explain how the one-to-one correspondence between orbi instantons and type 2B works. So here we have lots of diagrams. Let's focus for the moment on the black quiver, which you can recognize as the affiniate Dinkin diagram. Why I use this? Well, the idea is that we parameterize holonomies using a theorem proposed by Katz, which states the following. So discrete holonomies for a Lie algebra, we want homomorphisms from Zn to G, can be parameterized by selecting nodes of the Dinkin diagram such that the sum of the corresponding Dinkin labels is equal to the order of the holonomy. This is the rule. So here on top, of course, we have the E8 Dinkin diagram. So I'm picking holonomies of E8. And now we have also these other 2 quivers in red and blue. These are a bit unusual because these actually correspond to twisted affine Dinkin diagrams. So for L equal to, the maximum value of delta 7 I can have is 3, which corresponds to the E6 7 brane. So I will consider the E6 diagram, and for L equals 3, instead we have D4. So I consider this other option. So the main insight about this construction is that the inclusion of the S-fold forces us to consider in type 2B holonomies which are non-trivial as outer automorphism. This is the key point. And using twisted affine diagrams does precisely this. If I now pick nodes in these diagrams, such that the sum of the linking labels is equal to K, I will get an automorphism of order L times Ka, which has order L as an outer automorphism. So this is the idea. So on top, we have holonomies of E8. Below, we have twisted holonomies for different groups. But the nice thing is that there is a precisely one-to-one correspondence between the two setups. Let's pick, for instance, the L equal to case. So the parameter I of the NI numbers I mentioned before is just the linking label of the corresponding node in E8. Now, as I explained, yes?
How do you determine the direction of the arrow?
The direction, well, for the twisted affine, it's known it has this structure. You want F4 to fit, and here G2, because that's what the quotients allow.
No, but you pick labels in E8 which don't have any direction, and then you move them to labels in a quiver, in a graph which does have directions.
Yeah. So you said Y2 corresponds to 1 and not to 1 prime, for instance.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So here the key is the following. So we are trying to figure out what is the mapping between the two setups. So we want to construct the same four-dimensional theory, right? So in particular, the global symmetry has to match. The global symmetry is whatever commutes with the choice of holonomy. Okay. So this assignment is the only one which is compatible with the matching of the global symmetry. So this is how we fix it.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So, okay, let's continue from this. So, as I said before, orbiting instantons which allow easy to stifle Whitney twist are those such that I only activate parameters corresponding to nodes with a Katzel label which is divisible by 2, so it's even. So the only allowed nodes I can use are 2, 4, 6, 4 prime, and 2 prime. And here we see that we have a correspondence with nodes following these arrows, and the Katzel label in the resulting quiver. So the linking labels of the corresponding nodes in the quiver below are L times smaller. So if I consider a configuration of these nodes whose sum is equal to LK, the corresponding configuration of nodes below will have a sum which is equal to K. And there is clearly a one-to-one correspondence between these two configurations. So, and this is how we can map Orbi instanton setup, the M-theory setup to the type 2B1. Okay, so just to recap, in type 2B, we have theories labeled by all these parameters. We have an orbifold, we have an S-fold. We probe this background with MD3 branes. On the M-theory side, instead, I have NM5 branes on T2 with the twist. The orbifold order is not the same, it's multiplied by L. On one side, I have holonomies for the gauge algebra supported on the 7 brane, and an equal number of holonomies for the E8 algebras ported on the M9 brane on the other side. So I can describe with one setup or the other all S-fold theories which satisfy this constraint, as we said. Now, changing delta 7, which is something I am allowed to do in type 2B, allows us to describe mass deformations of these theories. So the idea is that all theories described by Orbi instantons in this way correspond to theories which sit at the top of mass deformation state. And then by changing the 7 brane, I can find its descendant upon relevant deformations. Are there any questions on this?
So by saying that the other ones describe mass deformations, you're just saying that they correspond to fixed points at the end of flows turned on by a mass deformation. Is that
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they are IR fixed points. Okay. Yeah. So mass deformations will be the next topic. Okay, good. So now let's start looking at the properties of these theories. So the easiest thing to start from is the global symmetry. So all these theories, let's say the Stiefel-Whitney ones, have a global symmetry which is a subgroup of the algebra supported on the 7 brane times SU. Okay, this is a consequence of the Orbi fold.
There's a question in the chat. How many independent parameters label the correspondence from Anindya?
How many parameters? I mean, this is how it works. So for given n and k, the number of options in M theory is equal to the number of options in type 2B, using this correspondence between the nodes. So in both cases, I describe holonomies by picking a collection of nodes. Once I have fixed the one in M theory, following the arrow, I get the arrows, I get the corresponding one in type 2B and the other way around.
Still writing, he says, I mean in terms of N, K, L, and so on.
You want to know how many are the number of options?
Yeah, sorry. What I mean is like, you seem to have some constraints, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the constraints is like this L delta 7 equals to 6.
Mm-hmm.
So after I've taken care of all the constraints, how many independent parameters do I have labeling the correspondence?
Yes, okay, that's okay, that depends on L. It essentially depends on the number of nodes. So I have as many free parameters as nodes in the quiver, and they are subject to one constraint. So yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so the total number is the counting I gave before for high K, for large K, the asymptotic is this one. The closed form expression is quite complicated. Okay, good. So let's go back to global symmetry. Okay, so I have at least these two factors. So one factor comes from the gauge symmetry on the 7 brane, the other from the Orbi fold. Okay, and now I can consider two possible types of mass deformation, one which preserves SUK, and this corresponds to changing the 7 brane type, as I said before. So we will call them 7 brane deformations. And then we can consider another set of deformations which holds age fixed and just affects SUK. And this also has a nice geometric interpretation. It corresponds in the type 2B setup to turning on a B field through the vanishing cycles of the Orbi fold. This is another way to implement a mass deformation. Okay. Now, for both sequences of mass deformation, we are able to predict the Coulomb spectrum of the resulting theory in the IR, the magnetic quiver described in the X branch, and compute Toft anomalies for the global symmetries. Okay, the Coulomb spectrum, we essentially use the known result for our B instantons and then rewrite the answer in terms of that. We have an explicit formula in the paper for the spectrum. What I would like to focus on are the last 2 points, magnetic quiver and Toft anomalies. Okay, so that's what I will discuss next. But before doing this, I would like to discuss the case L=1. Oh yeah, as a remark. Indeed, I said we have these 2 classes of mass deformations. Indeed, I can also conceive mass deformation which break both factors simultaneously. Okay, this is what we call in the paper mixed deformations. We haven't studied systematically those, so I cannot provide all this data for mixed deformations. We focused only on these 2 classes. Mixed deformation, I know how to deal with only for L=1. That's what I would like to explain now, because it gives a sense of what this family of theories looks like. Okay, and this is actually related to the projects I've done with Nopadol, William, and Alessandro. So we start again from our Stiefel-Whitney theories. So we start from our B instantons. We compactify them on T2. Since now we consider a case L=1, we have no twisting, nothing weird. It's just dimensional reduction. These theories have been studied extensively, starting with this paper, which found that this procedure gives a family of classes theories. Also, the magnetic quiver described in the X branch was provided in this work. It can also be derived in many other ways, for instance, from branes in type 2A. And the result is that the magnetic quiver has this form. So as you see, it contains the E8 Dinking diagram. So I will call this E8 type theories. And here we can recognize a family of star-shaped quivers. So we have a central node and some tails emanating from the center, this case 3. And this is exactly what comes out when studying classes theories. It's known that the 3D mirrors of classes theories is given by star-shaped quivers. In this case, the classes description involves a sphere with 3 punctures. Punctures in class S are labeled by partitions of n, the number of n5 branes of the underlying 2,0 theory. So this short tail on top, the vertical one, this means the corresponding partition contains 2 elements. Then the tail on the right is described by a partition with 3 elements. The third tail, the one on the left, is simply unconstrained. Okay, we could prove that all trinions of this type, subject to this constraint, actually arise in this way. So all of them are compactification of some Orbi instanton theory. The idea is quite simple, that the value of K, the rank next to the Dinking diagram, is the order of the orbifold in M theory. Then the number of M5 branes I have is just the number of times I can subtract E8 from the quiver. And the Katz labels, the numbers Ni, I showed before, which parameterize the holonomy. These are related with the excess numbers of the E8 nodes. For each node, I compute number of flavors minus twice the number of colors, and this turns out to give the Katz labels. Okay. once I have this set of theory, which is just a subclass of classes, what we get is that by turning on a mass deformation, we get all trinions, all classes theories on the sphere with 3 punctures, where one puncture is labeled by a partition with 2 elements, similar to the previous case. The other 2 punctures are completely unconstrained, and one can check that in these types of quivers, the E7 linking diagram always fits. So that's why we call E7 types of theories. Then now, if we continue from the set of E7 trinions, we can generate E6 type ones, which is basically all other spheres with 3 punctures. Okay. And then from this E6 type 3 puncture sphere, with another sequence of mass deformations, this time I may require many, I can generate all other theories on the sphere with an arbitrary collection of punctures. There's no constraint. Okay, so we get all classes theories on the sphere. The next thing is that for each mass deformation step, the rank is preserved, so we get theories all with the same rank, while instead the number of M5 branes, so the rank of the underlying 2,0 theory, changes along the RG flow. Now, regarding theories with higher genius, we can get them once we start from star-shaped, so theories on the sphere. By turning on other mass parameters, we can find higher genius theories. But these are slightly have a slightly different pattern, because we tend to get higher genius theories of lower rank accompanied by a set of 3 vectors. So these RG flows break up the theory into multiple sectors. Yeah, it's not the same pattern as we had before, but we get them. So the idea is that from RB instantons, we can get, by activating mass deformation, all classes theories with regular punctures, not twisted. And this just corresponds to the L=1 class of RB of my RBS fold setup. So this clearly indicates that this construction captures a sizable portion of the n=2 landscape, at least based on our current understanding of it. Okay, now let's move on to other S-fold theories with L greater than 1. Okay, we start from the quivers. As we have seen for L=1, we start from the linking diagram with a tail attached. And here we just do the same. Here I provide for possible values of L and delta 7 the relevant linking diagrams, and we attach a tail to it. It's very similar. If we change the type of 7 brane, if we change delta 7, we just change the linking diagram. And this explains how mass deformation of 7 brane type affect the magnetic field. Okay, now what about the other class of deformation, so the B field deformation? In the paper, we call them tail deformations, because that's what they do to the quiver. So here I just consider a special case with k=4 and L=2. So we have here the tail 1, 2, 3, 4 attached to the linking diagram. And now, as I keep mass deforming, the tail becomes shorter, and I attach a node on the other side to some of the nodes of the linking diagram. The linking diagram doesn't change. It gets modified a little bit in the process, but it, yeah, this doesn't change. Yeah, the only challenge here is to specify what these numbers A, B, C, D, E, so the rank of the nodes inside the linking diagram are. In the paper, we have explicit expressions in terms of the linking label, so they can be precisely determined. If you are interested in the paper, we have similar pictures for other values of L as well.
So here I have a question. So there are similar magnetic quivers for gauge groups with magnetic quivers for SO and SU theories with some matter and symmetric. Do you see that this should be, that it would follow from this procedure?
Well, yeah, this question can be approached in many ways. Yeah, so you have okay. So the idea is that okay, if we use the M-theory setup, I start from 60, I go down on a toes. So in principle, I can break this process into 2 steps. I go from 6 to 5 and then from 5 to 4. So in principle, all these theories should have some type of 5D origin. So they should correspond to CFTs in 5D, which usually are UV fixed points of gauge theories. The deformation in 5D, which corresponds to turning on the gauge coupling in 5D and flowing to the Lagrangian theory. From the 4D perspective, is a random mass deformation. So it can happen, I get quivers for gauge theories. Yeah, this.
The interesting point is that you start from M9.
Yes.
Which has, I mean, in type 2A, it will look like O minus plane.
Mm-hmm.
So you would expect, instead of SO, you expect SP. But nevertheless, you get the arrow in the direction which gives you SO and not SP. So this is very interesting. I don't see how you would.
Yeah, this is an interesting thing. So even though here we consider this deformation, this tail deformation or the field deformation, only for the maximal 7 brane, we just focus on that. So on top, indeed, we have the corresponding linking diagram. But as I start deforming, I get things which look like the linking diagrams for other types of evergreens. And the same thing also in L equal 1. So most of the mass deformation I need for these statements here, they are not like 7 brane type. They can be mixed, they can be tail, but still I go from E8 to E7 to E6. So it, in all the cases, it kinds of reflects the sequence of possible 7 branes. Yeah, the connection with gauge theories is definitely interesting. Yeah. Okay. So in any case, the main point is that for both kinds of deformations, we know how to construct the magnetic quivers, and this comes from the fact that we know the magnetic quiver of the parent Orbi instanton theories. So, you know, in order to get this, I start from the MTV description. This is the most convenient. If instead I want to look at Toft anomalies, central charges, then it's better to use the type 2B setup, because in this case we have D3 branes probing a background. So in the larger limit, these all have an holographic description where the internal space is S5 mod gamma of this type. The presence of the 7 brane makes the space singular. But nevertheless, this can be studied effectively. So in this work by Aroni and Tachikawa, the simplest setup with just flat 7 brane was considered. And the idea is that we do have gravity modes in the bulk, gauge modes on the 7 brane, but at least at leading order, they don't mix up. So the two contributions can be computed separately. So getting the leading order coefficients is not complicated. Here we have adapted their argument, and we found formulas of this type. So all leading terms can be computed in terms of the parameters I've explained before. Here the new ones are epsilon, which is the d3 brane charge of the background, and this this computes the flavor central charge, and this I is the embedding index of the factor H of the global symmetry inside the gauge group living on the 7 plane. There is a subtle point with this computation, though. These coefficients alpha, beta, and gamma, so the order 0 contributions. So in the simplest setup considered by Aroni and Tachikawa, where we have just flat 7 branes, these order 0 terms turn out to vanish, so there's nothing to compute. Here instead, they are non-trivial and should be computed as well. The problem is that from the holographic setup, we should go to one loop in supergravity, which is very challenging. So what we did is to bypass this difficulty with a trick. So we exploit the observation that for all Stiefel-Whitney theories and all the theories we can construct with these mass deformations, all these models do satisfy the Shapir-Tachikawa relation, which relates to A minus C, so the first term, to the scaling dimension of Coulomb branch operator. So once I have the spectrum, I can explicitly compute to A minus C and derive this number from that. And for these other two coefficients, beta and gamma, we mostly rely on the fact that indeed this contribution does not depend on n, can compute for any n. And for n equal 1, so the smallest rank theory inside my sequence, these models often have other realizations, typically classes from which I can compute these coefficients. So, okay, the holographic setup is most useful to fix the leading terms in all these expressions. Okay, and this is how we have worked out the properties of these theories. Okay, now let's see some applications to conclude. Okay, the first one is new predictions at rank 2. Okay, so here I will pick a specific example of Orbi instanton to start with. So we pick just 2 M5 branes, take orbifold order to be 2. So I get models with FU2 global symmetry, at least. And we take holonomy labeled by this specific choice of parameter, and L equal to. Indeed, this enables the ZL twist. Okay, good. The resulting theories are known. They were discussed also in this paper a few years ago. And in that paper, we observed that we can have a mass deformation, which leads to other CFTs with this Coulomb branch spectrum, 4 and 10 over L. This we have done for L equal to 3 and 4. But now with this realization, with this Orbi-S for the realization, now we know that the RG flows we were studying actually correspond to turning on the B field. We have this B field deformations. So in principle, we can do that also for L equal 5 and 6. Why not? There's nothing preventing us from turning on the B field. Okay. So,
question.
yes?
the magnetic quivers that you get are for a specific fixed point in 4 dimensions.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
But, can you get this fixed point as a limit of some perturbative theory that you need to tune the coupling to some specific value where the fixed point sits? Or this
You
is
mean starting like from asymptotically Fabry theories and looking for singular points on the Coulomb branch?
right? Yes, yeah.
For all of them, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Some of them it's possible. In general, I'm not sure.
So this requires additional work, you say. It's not visible.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. On this slide, we have an interesting alternative to that. Yeah. Let me continue a moment. Okay. Now, okay. For the Stiefel-Whitney theories with the maximal cerebrain, we know how to compute central charges exactly from the normally polynomial of Orbi instanton. And now we have this relation expressing the difference between central charges of the Stiefel-Whitney theory and the theory I get after the B-field deformation. This is a very simple expression in terms of the parameters I've introduced. And so we said, let's try to apply these rules, which we know to be valid for value less than 4, to the cases 5 and 6. Okay, and let's see what we get. So for L equal 5, we find that the infrared fixed point has this value for C minus A. Now the spectrum is 4 and 10 over 5, so 2 and 4. And this matches precisely the properties of a gauge theory, USP4 gauge theory, with a half hypermultiplet in the 16-dimensional event. This theory indeed is known. It was noticed it exists. It's kind of weird because it's not known how to get in string theory this complicated representation of a half hyper, so there is no global symmetry, there is no X branch. So this theory looks like this completely disconnected from the rest of the landscape. But yeah, by applying this argument, it seems we find it from the Stiefel-Whitney theory for L equal 5, which instead is a strongly coupled model. Once we turn on mass deformation for its SU2 global symmetry, we seem to land on this theory. So this is a suggestion for a string embedding of this model. And then finally, for L equal 6, we have this other result. The Coulomb branch spectrum here is more complicated, so this is not a gauge theory at all. I would like to notice that 5/3 and 4 is an allowed pair of Coulomb branch scaling dimensions, according to the result to this recent work by Philip and collaborators. At present, no known examples of theories with this spectrum are known. This is one proposal. This is a little bit strange because, of course, from the spectrum, we can tell the model is strongly coupled. But the UV theory, the Stiefel-Whitney model for L equal 6, is actually N equal 4 super Yang-Mills, so with gauge group G2. So kind of suggests that upon turning on a deformation for the global symmetry, we land on some complicated theory of this type. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So maybe it's silly, but what's the leap of faith from going from 4 to 5? Why is it certain that it's going to work at L equals 4? And
No. The argument is not more sophisticated than this. I just noticed that the RG flows, which have been worked out explicitly from the structure from the geometry of the Coulomb branch, these belong to this class of deformations. Yeah, from the stringy perspective, there is nothing stopping us from continuing. But yeah,
okay, so why do you say assuming the formula holds? What's the assumption in that?
Yeah, so this formula, we have no proof here. So the problem is that for the IR theory, we're not sure how to compute this beta, okay? So we don't have a first principle derivation of this formula for every L. For L equal 1, 2, 3, and 4, this holds true. And we assumed it holds also for 5 and 6. And that's how we land on these numbers. The fact that for L equal 5, we do get something sensible is already an interesting check, I think. Okay.
Thank you.
This is a proposal indeed. It's not a proof of existence. Yes. Now, once we said what we predict for rank 2, let's move to what we miss at rank 2. So, in short, we find all rank 1 CFTs. This was already part of the older construction without the inclusion of orbifolds. We capture basically all rank 2 theories whose X-branch is described by unitary quiver, which covers basically 90% of known theories in the tables by Mario and Gabi. But it was determined in this paper that 8 out of 70 are lacking a description of this type. Okay, so if a unitary quiver is not does not exist, is not possible, indeed we cannot get the corresponding theories in this way because all our models do have a unitary quiver description. So let's look at a little bit at this. I describe only the theories sitting at top of the mass deformation trees. So they have some descendants with the same property. So if we inspect the theories one by one, we find that all of them have somehow a 6D origin. So the first example is known to correspond to a twisted compactification of a SO8 gauge theory in 5D. We cannot get such gauge groups from Orbi instantons of type A, so maybe this can arise if I consider orbifolds of D type, but okay, we should investigate it to tell whether this is true or not. The other two examples are instructive because they illustrate how we could potentially generalize the construction. So both of them, since they are lacking a unitary quiver, are not captured by our Stiefel-Whitney construction. But we do know that they come from 60 theories on the torus. They actually correspond to the Orbi instantaneous gauge theory phases SU3 with 12 flavors. Okay. And they are twisted compactifications of this. The point is that for this theory, the corresponding Katz label is N3 equal to 1. So the only thing I can do is to do a Z3 Stiefel-Whitney twist. But the kind of operation which produces these theories is actually a Z2 twist. So it's more like a charge conjugation symmetry of the 6D theory. And this is not a twist of Stiefel-Whitney type. So there is more we can conceive, even starting from the set of theories we used, or the instantons of type A. So the only model at rank 2, which is not clear whether it fits in our pattern or not, if it comes from some 6D theory on T2, is the last one, because it's lacking completely a 5D origin. It's not known whether it exists or not, so it's not really clear how to fit inside our framework. But all other theories indeed do. Okay, once we have this, we tried to move on to higher rank in order to start getting a more precise understanding of higher rank models. In particular, we attempted charting our family of theories at rank 3. How we do that? Well, the idea is rather simple. We can start, for instance, in 60 from Orbi instanton. We list all possible Orbi instanton whose Stiefel-Whitney compactification gives a theory of the required rank. And these are the models which sit at the top of the mass deformation trees. So based on what we have seen, maybe all such theories arise as T2 compactification of 6D CFTs. If true, this would reduce the classification problem to understanding the mass deformation. In any case, yeah, checking whether such theories have some interesting properties. Their Coulomb branch has a specific structure is an interesting question. Then we just apply deformation, mass deformations according to our rules. We can do only for part of them, not mixed deformations in general. The thing I would like to stress is that this construction is algorithmic and does not require a detailed knowledge of lower rank theories. So what we've done at rank 3 could have been done for much higher rank. It's just more tedious. So what we found at rank 3 is a set of 115 models. In the meanwhile, we have found some more. Perhaps an indication of how much we capture is given by focusing on the Lagrangian theories. There are 31 different Lagrangian models at rank 3, and we get 17 of them. Okay, so just to wrap up, I have presented a new framework for studying four-dimensional theories with 8 supercharges. This construction seems to give us access to a very large set of theories, which include most models which have a known string embedding. Indeed, there are many possible generalizations, as we have seen, other types of orbifolds, also other types of twists. We have seen it's a possibility. And of course, finding a more systematic way to understand mass deformation. Could be interesting also moving to theories with minimal supersymmetry. And here I expect a nice story with the torus compactification of 6D theories with minimal supersymmetry on torus with fluxes. Okay, and this is also another interesting avenue. So thank you for your attention.
All right, let's thank Simone.
Thanks.
Do we have questions? So the mass deformations, how well do you understand them from the magnetic quiver perspective?
Yeah, so good. So what we have done is basically considering F5. So we had basically to guess them. So for L greater than 1, we used as inspiration the cases you have worked out at rank 2 and tried to generalize this. And indeed, we found a uniform recipe which covers all possibilities. And this generalized to the entire series. For the L equal 1 case, the star shaped, well, this is much more constrained because we have a precise expectation about the quivers we do expect. Okay, and here we found an interesting thing. So the easiest thing to attempt is not to try to guess what's the correct mass deformation, but try to invert the process. If you want, I actually have a couple of backup slides which explain this thing. If you want, I can quickly go through it. So
we can see if there is some other questions in the meantime.
Yeah, probably other questions, if any.
Okay, I'd say let's look at the slides.
Okay. Okay, good. So here, for example, just consider one case. We start from E8. This is E8 with a tail attached. This can be an order instant. Okay. Now you have two nodes coordinated by C and L. Say that in the tail, there is a node whose rank satisfies this relation. Okay. And now I consider this deformation. So I turn on an FI deformation only at the red nodes. Okay. You can say this is a very specific choice. Okay, good. Now, I don't expect anyone to see on the spot that the result of the heatsink is the quiver below, but it is, trust me, okay? And this has a E7 shape, in the sense that we can fit the E7 linking diagram. Good. Now, as you see, the rank of the nodes below are just simple linear combinations of those above, okay? The system of equations relating the two is simple enough to invert it. So let's try to do the reverse. So let's pick an arbitrary E7 quiver, which is good. And let's try to go backward and guess the parent E8. Okay. Now you might say, okay, but the specific deformation you have picked, okay, it's a very specific choice. Why just that? Why should any theory arise in this way? Well, it doesn't. But the point is the following. So if you look at this, the rightmost node here, H is connected only to D. And it's the same thing on the 7 quiver above. So if the node H here is good, as positive excess number, also the node here will be good for the same reason, okay? If you look in detail at all the nodes, this property holds for almost all the nodes in the quiver, except a few, those marked in green. These are potentially bad. Their goodness is not implied by the underlying E7 quiver. But now we can see that the nodes which are potentially bad are exactly those at which I'm turning on a FI. See? Okay. Now, the point is that if the FI deformation I picked is not the right one, okay, these green nodes will generically be bad. How do I deal with this? So here we can use simply the duality proposed by Itamar with the cyber dual. We know it is wrong in the sense that the modular spaces do not match, but it becomes true if the FI is turned on. So the idea is that the partition function of the theory diverges, but if I turn on an FI, I introduce an extra exponential damping, which makes the partition function convergent, and that what it matches with the cyber dual. So since the problematic bad nodes are precisely those at which I'm turning on a FI, I can just use the duality, no problem. The subtle point is that when I dualize a node, here we just pick a short piece of the quiver, also the pattern of FIs gets updated in this way. The sign is flipped and the value of FIs of neighboring nodes is shifted, okay? So if I do get a bad quiver, so it's not the right choice, I just keep dualizing until I get a good quiver. After a finite number of steps, this will happen. So it's not really important that I guess what the correct FI deformation is. It doesn't matter. I can pick any one, the simplest one I can come up with. If it's not the right thing, this dualization process will automatically guide me towards the correct answer. Now, this thing exploits heavily the fact that I kind of have a precise expectation of what I want to get from E8 star shape to E7 star shaped. If I don't have a good guess for that, applying this argument becomes much harder. But in principle, it can be used in other setups as well. Okay. And that's the idea we used to get our claim about all process theories for Morbin instance.
Okay.
No, so that's
Good.
that's what we added to what you know already, what is contained in our paper. Yeah, that's the actual observation. For non-simply laced, I don't know how to implement. Maybe it's possible to play a similar trick.
Yeah, I thought maybe you found some logic, but it's a bit tricky.
No, not much better. No. In particular, I think that what prevented us to look in detail at all possible mixed deformation is precisely that, contrary to this case where we have CFTs only if the quiver is star-shaped. In the non-simply laced case, we don't have a precise argument for that. So I'm not sure whether the thing I get describes a CFT or not. So yeah, this is something which makes it harder to explore them systematically. Yeah, maybe some other approach can be useful for that.
Very good. Do we have more questions?
Okay.
If
Good.
not, then I would say let's thank Simone again.
Thanks.
That's it.
We can go off the record.